Chicago. My name is Charles Thomas, sitting in this morning for Mays Jackson alongside attorney Kimberly Egoin, who is our commentator here at WVON, as well as another commentator here at WVON, Amara Inya, in her regular Tuesday appearance here. And we've been talking about what can be said to the community to somehow mitigate, lower the violence that everyone is expecting to occur over this long holiday weekend. What could you say at a press conference like the one that's scheduled for 11 o'clock this morning involving several black elected officials as well as clergy? And we've had people waiting on the live line to offer us suggestions on what you can say, what can be said, words that might mitigate the violence. Bill, you've been waiting for a few minutes there on the line. We do appreciate your call. What do you think? What can you say to folks?
I believe that, first of all, there are rituals. We know about these rituals for years, about the gangs and everything. They have to kill somebody, have some kind of Jesse James putting some kind of stripe on his gun. Okay. And I say what we need to do is these people who are involved. Well, first of all, there has to be high schools, all the high schools in the city and the grade schools. There has to be counselors that come in and tell people the results of what they do if they do it. Make it an actual course. Make them have to pass that course. That the right way to do it, what death does. Let them visit cemeteries. Let them go out on during the week as part of a problem. If they start causing problems, let them work in the cemeteries.
But Bill,
let them work. But the thing is, what I'm saying is this. See, what the real problem is, the community needs to be empowered as far as security and everything with their own cameras and everything else, and have their meetings, and that way the politician is not directly involved.
But Bill, the question was, what can you say in a mass media situation, in a press conference? You're having a press conference. What could you say that could somehow stop or at least lower the incidence of violence in the community?
That you have repercussions, and that there would be home security within the community, that people would actually pledge that they would say something. Because most of the things, that last scene I saw on television, there was a car. I guarantee you, people who watch television know whose car passed by and shot those kids. And what I'm saying, that's what we need. We need people with cameras and things and sincerely going out. And without the police going after the person who is the witness. And the problem has been that the witness becomes the victim of courts.
Bill,
and that's what they need to go after them.
Thank you so much for your phone call. But again, I'm going back to the question. You're going to have a press conference at 11 a.m. on July 3rd to try to address violence, reduce violence that is expected to happen over the next 4 or 5 days. What can you say in that press conference that could help the situation right now? Because they waited until today to have a press conference. So what can you say today that would reduce violence in Chicago? Art, can you hear?
Hey, what's going on this morning? How are you, sir?
Art, what would be the message that you would send out there?
First of all, we talk about the political representatives. There's nothing they can say because they have no power. So that's a waste of time because they cannot back up anything they can say. So
but there's some preachers that are going to be there. Some preachers will be there.
They don't have no power, so they're wasting their time because they can't back up anything they say. If there's no Marshall Plan that is signed to executive order where when they got on the news and they stated if you are involved or know about any of these violent crimes that act against someone else, the consequences would be severe, and it was a point by point where when you get called this was going to happen immediately, then you're wasting your time on that end. All of this stuff has to be proactive, which is called code of conduct, number one, and black people have to stop patronizing by saying either black people committing crimes, either savages that look black that's committing crimes. So long as you all continue to patronize these individuals who are savages out here committing crimes against one another, they're going to continue to do so because you don't have codes of conduct and you all refuse to call it what it is. Savages committing crimes against innocent people. I don't have a problem with somebody taking out, if they have an issue with someone individually, that's something on a different level. But when it comes to you carjacking, breaking people's houses, and killing innocent people, then you should be taken out. At the end of the day, may God bless.
Thank you, Art. Amara, do you believe that, okay, we're going to have a press conference today, and I assume that the mainstream media will cover it. Do you think they're going to really focus on the fact that black people are committing the vast majority of these violent incidents, or will they sugarcoat it?
They'll probably sugarcoat it. I don't see them being very direct about saying that it's black people committing the vast majority of crimes. I think they're going to speak about it generally as they typically do, just about the level of violence, and they'll probably say in South and West Side communities,
exactly,
which is the go-to line. Because it gets into sensitive territory. I mean, now we have to talk about not just what we can do at the policy level, but it also shines a light on what's the breakdown within the community itself, where the caller that just made his comments talked about this notion of savages within the community, that they may be black, but these are people that are harmful to the community. And how do we deal with that internally? And I actually think that brings up a good point. What are the internal systems and structures that we have in place to address the crime within our own community without necessarily relying on outside entities, the police or government, to have to step in? I mean, after all, these are our communities.
Kim?
Well, I also believe that I want to rely on the government as well. And the reason why I say that is because we all pay into this government. And I am watching resources go to every community except for the South and the West sides. So when Representative LaShawn Ford was on a little bit earlier, and he was mentioning the idea that he was going to call some of the governmental agencies to task, like DECA and some other agencies like that, to invest more in the communities, that would help on the front end. That would help, you know, when you're talking about a community that has been so decimated as far as resources. And I'm not going to say that lack of resources automatically leads to violence, but I think that it is a precursor. When people do not have the education system is completely messed up. The jobs are completely messed up. You have abandoned housing all up and down your streets. And there's a sense of hopelessness. There's something that we can do as black people, individuals, but we do need the government that we pay into to put those resources back into our communities.
You know, I think we have to put our struggle as captive people in perspective, and that we have to make eradicating violence in our community part of our struggle. And I don't see mainstream media doing that. I see them, again, sugarcoating and not putting it in the context of who we are and where we have been in this hemisphere, and why we have to overcome that as part of our struggle. And I don't see that or hear that narrative.
So are you saying that it's an inherent part of being African American, that the struggle?
It's an aftermath of slavery, of bondage, of captivity. It's a situation we were put in, and if we make ourselves aware of where we are historically, then we can take the steps we need to take to survive.
The only thing I would say to that, Charles, is that there have been times in our history that we have been extremely successful and have had extremely successful communities, and violence was put upon us. It wasn't the breakdown of our community.
But now we're putting the violence on ourselves. I mean,
and I see that to me, it's both and. I mean, there's the front that is definitely accountability for those who purport to represent our interests, to make sure that we do have the kind of investment, direct investment across policy areas that other communities have, and which is why they thrive. But at the same time, understanding where we are as a community, we cannot look away at the fact that there's some responsibility that we have to have. So, for example, where I live, like I have a responsibility, I think, to get to know the guys on my block, to get to have conversations with them when things are happening, to engage them, because I know that if I call the police, I probably won't want to call the police for an incident that's going on because it could be worse. It could turn out worse for me. So there's some internal accountability too.
The only people to save us is us. We'll be back right after news, traffic, and weather.
This news report is brought to you by Lowe's. Come into Lowe's for July 4th savings and get the grill going with a 2-pack of Kingsford charcoal, now only $9.88. All projects have a starting point. Start with Lowe's. Offer valid through 7/4. See store for details.
Live from the WVON newsroom, here's our news now.
At 7:30, temperatures are already at 70 degrees. We're headed near 80. Good morning. I'm Annette Flournoy, and here's what's happening. A group of black clergy and local black elected officials are set to hold a news conference later this morning to talk about the possibility of holding city, state, and federal hearings that might lead to policy changes to stop the epidemic of violence on the city's south and west sides. Pastor Anthony Williams will be there. He lost a son to gun violence last February.
Because of that, my suggestion was having these hearings. What's going to happen this weekend, we have no control, and I pray no one dies or gets killed. But to get these elected officials, we're talking about state, county, local hearings, and then next federal hearings. The hearings change public policies. The hearings change mindsets. We're talking about how we transform the culture of violence.
The news conference will be held at 11 a.m. this morning at the Thompson Center. The 4th of July week in Chicago will include celebrations, of course, but also protests against violence. Despite criticism, Father Michael Plager is going ahead with his huge march Saturday, where hundreds will stop traffic on the northbound lanes of the Dan Ryan Expressway from 79th to 67th Street to call for common sense gun laws, community resources, better schools, jobs, and economic development. Illinois State Police are warning drivers they will be out in full force on the roads this holiday week. State police commanders yesterday said they